So, walking away from a high salaried, stable tech career in your 40s probably looks a bit like a midlife crisis to people on the outside looking in. I was 43, and on paper, everything looked good. I was successful. I was making six figures working in gov tech, which is government tech industry, and everything seemed fine. But what was happening behind the scenes is I was paying a very high tax on dealing with burnout. So what I ended up doing was taking a step back and actually looking at what was happening, identifying what the issue is, and I decided to do something about it. And if you are currently living a life that shows that you're super successful on paper, but you're slowly losing your freaking mind, this video is for you. Let's get into it. So I want to talk about what the buildup of everything kind of leading up to my exit from my career looked like. So basically, if I am being completely honest with myself, this started very early in my tech career. I would say maybe 2 years into my tech career when I really realized, I don't really think working in GovTech is what I want to do. But I gave myself the excuse that I just needed to find the right job, the right position, or start making more money, and, things will get better. That was when it really started. And 2 years later, after working super hard to just chase promotions and the highest, higher salary as I went, I ended up hitting a wall and experienced burnout for the first time. Now, then I didn't really know that that's what I was dealing with. I just knew that I was exhausted. I found myself crying a lot of times when I had to think about work or dealing with things, or I just was overwhelmed with a lot of, things, especially when I was given, extra responsibilities to handle at work. It was just really tough. I had definitely had the Sunday dreads, getting super anxious and just uneasy when I knew that I had to kind of go back into work, and just checking out, right? And this is what was happening early in my career, and I was dealing with all of that, which ended up leading to me hitting a wall, and that was the first time that I had ever taken a career break. And all of those things were signs that I just wasn't aligned, but I didn't know that then. I just chalked it up to just being stressed out, not being in the right job, right? Separate from the actual career path that I'm in. I just thought I just needed a better job. I just needed a better job, right? Still within the same industry, which is GovTech, but just a better job. And once I got that, everything would be fine. But fast forward to today, still in GovTech. Even after taking the first career break, it was great because it recharged my battery after my very first career break, which is what I was on before I landed the role that I just recently quit from. My battery was definitely recharged. I had a new sense of ambition and motivation, right? I just got to find the right job, right? I just need to land six figures. Once I start making some real money, things are going to get better. Well, guess what? I landed that six-figure job. All of the prestige that came along with the type of work that I was doing, high salary, cool title, everything. I had finally made it. I had hit the pinnacle of success, right? That's what they tell us. Once the goal is always six figures. Once you're not really making money until you make six figures, right? So I had done all of that, and I would say about a year into my, new role, new six-figure role, is when the symptoms of burnout started to begin. But what was happening was, again, realizing that the job probably wasn't, just realizing that the job wasn't a good fit, but instead of me just, starting to apply for other jobs, I decided, hey, instead of me just applying to any job just so I can get out of this situation, because that's what I did before and it didn't work, let me work on making myself completely, like, super, super marketable, because the next job I definitely have to make a jump in my salary. I can't, I need to just keep moving higher and it'll be better, right? It'll get better. So what ended up happening was I kind of started stacking on things, because now what I'm dealing with, and again, not really realizing this until I'm able to step away a little bit later on during my career, to look at things from a different perspective. I just on the tip of being a high performing, overachiever, high functioning, high performing. The answer was just to pile on more things to kind of take my mind off of work, stuff to kind of keep me constantly occupied, but working towards something. And the combination of just not being aligned with the type of work, the type of work environment that I was in, it was, stressful, and the type of, just everything, it just wasn't aligned. And again, it connected back to the beginning when I was like, I don't really think I need to be working in GovTech, but this is what kept me in. What kept me in is that it just made the most sense given my military background. And then I went to school for IT, and it just all made sense. I might as well do it because it was a relatively easy, a relatively lower barrier to entry, right? It was kind of easy for me to get into, and that's what I did. And because the potential there for high salary, high earning was there because of working in tech, I just, took it and ran with it. Even though, I was able to realize pretty soon, pretty quickly in my career that it probably wasn't the best fit for me. I was really always really good at my job and what I did because, again, high performer. So it wasn't that the work was too hard or anything like that. I was always really good, but I just never felt great about what I was doing ever, in any event. That's, what it looked like for me ultimately, was the high functioning burnout. Instead of it looking like I'm sad and depressed all the time, it was me looking extremely ambitious and just a go-getter. Oh, you're going for another cert? Okay, okay, now you going to grad school, you ready to get your master's degree? Okay, oh, you still working full-time? That's what's up. Keep doing, keep grinding, keep hustling. That's what it looked like, But what was happening was I was just pushing my mental capacity to the limit, right? And I would just crash. When I had time off, I would just crash, right? And then that transferred into heavy exhaustion. It getting, more difficult each day to just get up and get ready for work, hitting my snooze button 2, 3, 4 times. It got to the point where my mom would have to call me to make sure, she had to make sure that I was up because it was getting tough. And the absolute turning point wasn't that, because I noticed these things happening, but I just kept pushing through because I had my eyes on a prize. Like I had my, my fix was just make yourself more marketable so you can get a way better job than this, and then you'll be set, right? And so that's what I was focused on. And this is what, finally changed everything. It was when I started taking vacations because I was exhausted, and that's when I really realized, okay, Kay, you need to take breaks. You need to just take some vacation. You have all this ton of vacation time stashed away, because I was never taking, PTO, taking vacation as much as I could have been, right? And so I had all of this stuff, vacation time stashed away, and I started using it. But what I was realizing is that I would take these great trips, feel great and amazing when I was away, but as soon as I came back to work, I just felt like crap all over again. And after about the third trip, the third trip was the longest and furthest away. I ended up taking a trip to Portugal, which I'll talk about that trip in a separate video. But it gave me time to really rest and put things into perspective on why I kept feeling the way I, thinking about what I was doing, the path that I was on, why it wasn't working for me, actually seeing a different way to live while I was, there, all of these things. And then also feeling better physically, because one thing that I forgot to mention is that my health was declining. I started having a lot of aches and pains and just chronic pain, just out of nowhere. I had a desk job, and I got up, got up and walk around and stuff all through, to keep the blood flow, because, it's really not good to sit in, for long periods of time anyway. So I understood all of that, but just dealing with a lot of aches and pains, all of this stuff. And I was able to I just started doing my research about burnout, because I was like, I think I might be burned out. Because at first I'm like, I know I'm not particularly depressed. I don't feel depressed, but I just don't feel right. I just don't feel good. And so that kind of sent me on my little Googles and searching, researching about burnout. And I was like, wow, I'm definitely burnt out. And then I was able to put even what happened to me in the past into perspective. Like, yeah, I've been dealing with burnout. I don't think I've ever honestly fully recovered from the first stint. I think I kind of just, was able to rest up enough just to get my energy way back up, but then deplete my energy again, right? And that was really the turning point. And once I realized, I just need to completely change what I'm doing. I need to get out of this career field. It wasn't the job itself. It was, GovTech, that career industry. Because I kept saying to myself, as long as I keep doing work within this industry, I don't think I'm ever going to be happy. And so what did I do? I devised my exit plan, and I executed, right? My exit plan involved saving an FU fund, prepping myself to make, doing what I can to prepare to attempt to be remote friendly whenever I did decide to get back into the workforce, figuring out my plan for where to live, which I ended up moving back home, the whole nine. And I'll do another video detailing a lot of this, which I've talked about over the course of my videos, bits and pieces. But yeah, I just devised an exit plan and executed on it. And what you're seeing now is me almost 3 months into a career break. My first career break actually lasted 18 months. And like I said, I came back and re-entered the workforce, motivated, energized, and recharged. But it only took 2.5 years for that energy to be completely depleted. So I'm not for sure how long this career break is going to last. I'm prepared for it to last a year. But only time will tell. So here we are today. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that high tax, that we pay. And the golden handcuffs kind of, comes into play. Golden handcuffs is like when you have a high salary job, a high paying job, and you feel stuck. You don't really want to leave because you don't want to give up this, high paying job. You might have really good benefits. And you don't want to give it up. It's just everything is right, looks great on paper. You're successful. And the thought of leaving, not wanting to leave a high salary behind kind of keeps you in a job that is not right for you. That came into play a little bit that came into play definitely in the beginning. Just feeling guilty about wanting to quit my job because it was such a good paying job, and trying to push through and just coming up with different ways to deal with how I was feeling. But ultimately, I let that idea go, you know. So I guess the biggest takeaway that I want you to get from this video is, if you currently are finding yourself in the same type of situation, everything looks good on paper, you have a really good job, you make a high salary, you know, and you might find yourself in a golden handcuff situation, just start paying attention to the signs. Again, I'm not talking to the people who are happy with their career and everything's going great and they couldn't be happier. I'm talking to the ones who everything looks good on paper, but you don't feel good about it, right? You don't feel, you're feeling unfulfilled, you're feeling empty, and you're trying to figure out what you need to do. Start paying attention to those signs. They might be similar to the things that I experienced throughout dealing with burnout with my, last job. And just, especially when it gets to the point to where you're like physical health, like you know, is starting to decline. Your mental health also declines, but you know, chronic pain and stuff like that, you know, don't let it get to that point. Or if it is already at that point, definitely pay attention to that. It could definitely be an indication that you're not aligned with the type of work you should be doing, and definitely need a change. All right. And you don't have to wait. You definitely don't have to wait until it gets as bad, especially that it got for me, which, you know, was definitely feeling completely empty, getting harder and harder each day to get up and go to work, experiencing chronic pain out of nowhere, you know, and just, you know, having trouble focusing, any of those signs and symptoms. You don't have to wait until it gets extremely bad or that you're in a hospital because your body decided to force you to take a break. Because I've also seen that happen. Thankfully, it hasn't happened to me, but I've definitely seen that happen with before. You don't have to wait until that point. Start working on it now. Start thinking about it now. Thinking about what you have to do in order to change your situation, change your quality of life for the better. All right, that's the biggest takeaway that I want to impart you with today. And just, you know, if you're currently paying that silent tax that I just described in this video with your current work situation, let me know. Let me know in the comments what your idea of, you know, winning at life is, you know, outside of what they tell us it is. What is your ideal of winning? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and having this discussion. And until the next time, I will see you in the next video. Take care.